Hello, explorers. This is Dr. Moby, the Explorer, and I am back with a different kind of conversation. So, Courtney and I, if you're wondering why I have her on the channel so much, when she and I talk, we talk about a vast range of topics and just experiences, lived experiences that we have encountered throughout our lifespan. So, one of the conversations that we had, she and I have been able to have friends and relationships with people that may look like us but have a very different cultural backgrounds. So I wanted to have this conversation because she and I was talking one day, and we started talking about just living with various cultures. Although we're all African descent, we come from different backgrounds. Today we are going to talk about her experiences growing up in a culturally diverse home. What did that look like for her? What are some takeaways? Even if you are, a lot of us, we're living in a world now where we're mixing, we're blending. You've got Jamaicans marrying African Americans, and you've got Africans marrying African Americans, and then there are people who are promoting. If you haven't checked out my other video, I had a young man that was Ghanaian descent who talked about he encouraged Africans to marry African Americans, but with that marriage and with those relationship building, we have to learn to appreciate cultural differences, and to understand yourself first, because it's very difficult if you lack an understanding of yourself to be able to appreciate someone else's culture, or to be able to understand that we each bring value to a space, right? We each bring our own value to a relationship, any kind of relationship, whether it's friend relationship, whether it's intimate relationship, we bring value to that relationship. And on this channel, I talk about learning from you, you learning from me, so that we can grow and glow. And so with conversation and dialogue and communication and studying, researching, asking questions, this conversation will be a little different, because we're going to talk about cultural norms and behaviors, in which takes adjustments. It takes adjusting. So I want you lean in to this conversation. Hit the like button now. Don't hesitate, because you may forget. Share this video with those that you think may need it, or those who you think may just enjoy the conversation. I want to thank you first for continuing to support the content. I hope that it is meaningful, informative, helpful, and I hope some of your thoughts are reflected in the conversations in which we have on the Moby Explorer channel. Know that each of us are explorers. It's just, how do you want to explore? What do you want to explore? And what is important to you? And what's important to me is stronger continents and Blacks globally having a strong foundation, and knowing that we can support one another and build a community of like-minded people. And that's important, like-minded people who are working toward one common goal, and that is to unify, to be economically stable, and mentally ready for the challenges of this world. So lean into our conversation. I rambled, I know, but I have so much that I'd like to share with you. Again, I say welcome back, Miss Courtney. Miss Courtney, I thank you. Our conversations just, they can always make me think of another topic that you and I should share with everyone. You're in depth, knowledge is beyond your age, your years. But we're talking about diverse cultures in the background. Can you just start with just giving us a brief introduction and background about you again? Again, if you have not checked out, we have 2 or 3 other videos together. Check those out. But Miss Courtney, just briefly tell us about your background.
Sure. So I'm originally from Louisiana. I was born there. My mother is born and raised from Louisiana, and my father is from Trinidad and Tobago. However, I grew up in St. Louis, so I spent a lot of my formative years there. Went back down south to college, and since then, I think I've lost count. I've lived in probably 10 or 11 states that I've my job moved me to cross country, East Coast, West Coast. And I've been in like the rail industry and aerospace for the last 15 years, mostly aerospace, doing manufacturing and consulting. So, and traveling has always been one of my passions that I just love to do. I think I waited a little longer because I always wanted to find people to travel with me. And then finally I just said, you know what? If you don't do this now, it'll never happen. If you keep waiting on somebody else, life is going to pass you by. So I started putting together my bucket list at, I think I was 28 or 27 when I first put it together. I said, these are the things I want to accomplish by 35. And I just put all the countries there. And a lot of that came from my father, because he always, he and my mother had similarities, but in other ways they were opposites, because by him being Caribbean, he was very much, hey, the world is your oyster, go out, explore. He told us stories about where all these countries he had traveled to as a fisherman. So, and my mother was more of your traditional, I would say like Cosby Show, go to HBCU. My mom was a proud Southern graduate. My uncle played my uncle played football at Grambling. They were the first ones to graduate from their, college on that side of the family. We definitely had that strong HBCU, I'd say allegiance throughout my family on my mother's side. And my mom's family is all Louisiana, Texas. And most of my dad's family are still in South America. And there's a small group in New York and a few cousins, I think, still in Florida. But we're in some in London. So we're, growing up in with that dynamic was very, very interesting.
What kind of life lessons did you have growing up from, just give us your dad's life lessons, since he had a South American, which is a different culture from your mom's. What kind of life lessons did your dad and then give your mom?
So before I answer that, I'll reference your interview that you did with, is it Dr. Reynolds, I think? Rodney. Dr. Rodney. Okay. That was great to watch. And I noticed that, him being from Jamaica, right? Yep. There's certain nuances between the islands, like Jamaicans and Caribbean people, or West Indian. It's funny how you find the different, there's like this rivalry between the islands, Bajans and Trinis and Jamaicans. Jamaica kind of is like the flagship that everybody gets the attention. So everybody knows Jamaica. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter where you're from. If you have a Caribbean accent, they would always say, oh, is your dad Jamaican? Is your dad Jamaican? Yeah. So he never shunned that culturally. He would just laugh and say, no, I'm Trini, but Trinis are very, very proud people. So it's a different dynamic from having, I'd say, this Creole Cajun culture in Louisiana. And then like the Texas side, as a people, I think we're very proud, but I didn't see the pride as much as you see it from the Caribbean. Like they come over, here's my flag, because they were allowed to keep their culture.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of differences with what they were allowed to do during colonial times and the transatlantic slave trade that we were not allowed to do, where we had that stripped away. So as a little girl, once I started to learn history, I had to educate my dad on that, because he didn't learn about Jim Crow. He knew there was slavery, but if you hear before my dad passed, if you would have heard him talking, you probably would think he would sound like, I would say, a white person that has not been educated about the ills and some of the long-term effects of slavery on Black people.
Wow, really?
Which was opposite from my mother. So we had this interesting dynamic where my dad might make a comment. So let me back up. My father always believed you'll never get rich or wealthy working for someone else. So, and it was, he always told us, you know what, go learn, go to school, get your education, learn what you need to so you can always do your own, because that's how you're going to build wealth for your family. So he, you know, so that was a little girl, as long as I can remember, he always was preaching Napoleon Hill, Dr. What was it, Reverend Ike, you know, a lot of those teachings, Les Brown. And my mother's side was more of the, hey, get all that crazy talk out your head, go to school, be an attorney, or do this, get your bachelor's, get your master's. So my dad was like, well, then what? What happens when you get that? You're going to go work for the white man? You're going to be back on the plantation? So my mother saw that as stability. She had been with the same company for over, I think, 37 years. She retired. And she saw that as, hey, I've worked for this good master, you know. I worked for this good boss that has taken care and provided for my family. What's wrong with that?
Absolutely.
You know, why are you diminishing it? And it was, I'm not going to say, I would say it's sometimes, I think up until like I got later in life, I felt like my dad looked down on African Americans, even though he was married to an African American. So, and I'll explain. It's interesting because he would tell us, don't be like these lazy people. I was like, well, Dad, this is my uncle or my cousin. Oh yeah, look at what life has got for them. You know, they went to school, got a degree. He hates his life. Now he's miserable because they're full. They have nothing but debt. He doesn't own anything. They're renting. You know, so I heard this as a child. Don't be like these people. And I felt conflicted. Like, well, what do you mean? And I would talk to my mom. Or my mom might sit at the table and just try to level set. She's like, well, he's saying don't strive for mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but he was very blunt when he would, you know, kind of give that directive. And his perspective coming here to the country with nothing. I think he was a fisherman. He lied about his age when he was 15 to get and become his fisherman. So then he started coming to Houston and different ports, and then built up some a business for himself to where he had his own shrimp boat, and then he had another business, and then got into chemical industry. So he felt like, I came here to this country with nothing, and I was able to build and start a business on my own. He was like, the white man didn't give me anything, the banks didn't give me anything, I did this on my own. You mean to tell me that people who grew up here, who have free education, can go to college for free? He's like, and then he would always give 3 or 4 examples. My cousin went to so-and-so and got a loan, and now they're a doctor, or now this person has this business. And he'd use a Korean person that he knows, they came here, got a loan, you know. So it was a very, I say as a child, we kind of felt like, wow, should we be embarrassed to be Black? Like, should I only take pride on this side of the family because this side of the family is like, you know, has this different mindset. But when I got older, I learned, okay, Dad, you're not really understanding the PTSD and the gym and what has happened. I said, Black people did all of that. You know, we actually had businesses. I had to teach him about the Tulsa massacre and all these Rosewood. I remember showing the movie when it came out to him.
Absolutely.
So he kind of looked at it as, okay, well, yeah, I'm not saying those things didn't happen, but the KKK isn't marching down the street burning y'all neighborhoods now. And look how they keep their neighborhoods. Like, somebody could inherit a house from their grandmother, and there's 4 or 5 adults living there, and no one is taking care of the house. And we could drive through any hood in any city and see this. And without generalizing too much, you know, I was explaining to him, it's an apathy in the people. It's not that they don't want to strive. He saw it as, don't be mediocre and always, you know, move beyond. And just because they set the bar low for you doesn't mean you have to reach it. You know, you don't have to stay there. Like, there's no.
And what I do, I caution a lot of my foreign friends or immigrant friends when they say those statements. I caution them because I always tell them the dynamics between white Americans and Black Americans is different. So a lot of times you all will get opportunities because you're non-threatening to them.
Correct.
So
there's a model minority. The model minority is a thing.
You said a couple of things throughout this entire our conversation that made me just think about the dynamics of various cultures merging to marry, right? And it also reinforces what I've said on this channel before, is that so many of us lack an understanding of our own history and our own background and our own self, right? Yep. That it is very difficult to then travel and to appreciate or to understand or just have a open mindset about other cultures. African Americans, we have various subcultures.
Yes, we do.
What people do in New Orleans is different from what people do in New York or St. Louis. We have subcultures. But would you suggest that, let's just say African Americans marry Africans? What are Caribbeans marry African Americans? Based on your childhood experience and your experience, would you say that's a good dynamic? Or if you said it's not, what would you say the work needs to happen before we come together?
Okay, so that is a great question. I'm biased. I want to give, so if I had to answer a yes or no question or give a yes or no answer without explanation, I would say no. But